Hello, my name is Summer and I will be doing the voiceover for this class presentation. The group decided to focus on a school-based intervention to outline diversity in STEM. Our target audience for this presentation is high schoolers. To begin, I think it is important for the audience to understand what STEM stands for. STEM is an acronym standing for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. As of 2001, there have been many initiatives to steer people towards STEM. In particular, the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, during his presidency, hosted the first White House Science Fair, as well as made a statement that capitalized on the importance of STEM. Obama would launch his program, Educate to Innovate, that would increase the number of students and teachers in STEM. As of right now, STEM continues to be a growing field. As STEM continues to grow, diversity becomes the central theme. Diversity is the interconnecting stories each individual has lived that defines who they are, be it their race, gender, education, work, age, and sexual orientation. It may seem like diversity and STEM do not collide on various levels, but they actually do. We need diversity in STEM fields in order to ensure that every group is represented correctly. Right now, this is not how it is in most areas of the STEM field. Instead, there is a dominant white male population. However, we hope to eventually change this power dynamic. With most of the STEM field having white male dominance, areas of research may have some type of bias in the questions and answers given or received. This bias may end up benefiting the people working in these fields rather than everyone. These biases in research could determine what is learned in our schools today and in our future. Without diversity, certain issues will continue to persist, preventing solutions and affecting specific groups of people. Overall, diversity is important because it not only increases levels of productivity in areas that were not possible before, but it also provides different types of communication. Having various modes of communications allows for a global exchange of ideas. Diversity also provides an overall long-term change in economic growth and global competitiveness. There is a history of women and minorities not being represented fairly and equally in this world. People originally thought that women and minorities were less valued than a white male. In particular, the scientific field sought to limit any success by using Darwinian arguments and preventing women and minorities access to education. For a long time, these ideas persisted. However, these groups overcame these hurdles through various social movements like the Civil Rights Movement. Unfortunately, as one problem was solved, another one would appear. A prime example was stolen inventions or patents. In the past, less so now, women and minorities would have their inventions stolen because they had limited access to patent rights. Instead, these inventions would be credited to another individual, typically a white male at the time. In short, the women or minority would receive no credit. Today, if a woman or person of color does not successfully enter the STEM field, they still often face discrimination. Currently, women make up 24% of the STEM field, with men making up the other 76%. On top of this, women and minorities are also not likely to receive the same benefits or pay as a white male. Do you know who first discovered that DNA has a double helix? Are you thinking it was a man? Well, think again. It was actually Rosalind Franklin. Even though her father did not support her decisions on becoming a scientist, she thrived to become one anyway. She got accepted into Cambridge University to study chemistry. She worked on finding the correct structure for DNA through crystallography and high-resolution photographs, which is something no scientist had done before. She reported her findings at King's College, where other white male scientists were also searching for the same thing. When James Watson hears about her findings, he published a book called The Double Helix, where he explains the structure of DNA. He states that he did not pay attention to Franklin's findings, but to another white male. This research is what confirmed their suspicions about DNA and led to 3 white males to get a Nobel Prize, without a mention of her. This is just one example of how a woman is not taken seriously in STEM. She worked hard, yet was not recognized for the work she did, all because she was a woman. Another important figure in scientific history was George Washington Carver. He was both a scientist and an educator of his time. He grew up poor, but would develop his keen interest in studying plants, also known as botany. Carver's long-standing research on plants, in particular peanuts, would lead him to be known as the Peanut Man. Carver would one day stand in front of the House Ways and Means Committee. The House Ways and Means Committee is one of the oldest long-standing committees in the White House. There, Carver would introduce his research on peanuts. His research would become popularized, with some not liking the idea of a black man as a hero. However, most of Carver's life would actually be spent tucked away in Alabama teaching at the Tuskegee Institute with his fellow compatriot Booker T. Washington. Carver would never profit from his findings and would leave all but 3 inventions unpatented. While Carver died at the age of 79, he left a legacy behind that will never be forgotten. These are some methodologies for intervention. The first is the move from duality to heterogeneity. This would mean incorporating a more dynamic model that represents all spectrums of diversity, including individuals of various backgrounds. Developing critical awareness will help others reflect on their actions and challenge their previous assumptions and biases. Then, move from reductive to complexity, meaning rethinking the modern framework of ideas and make it more inclusive. Another idea is to acknowledge levels of influence, understanding the role you play and the dynamics of power. Also, increasing relevance of research to the needs of socially disadvantaged people. This means making sure research incorporates all communities at a disadvantage, whether it be from a social, ecological, medical, biological, and more standpoint. Next idea for intervention would be actively addressing social change. Understanding and addressing the systems of inequality and identity, strategic ways to effect social change. Additional methodologies for intervention include being participatory by involving the community and populations in research and eliminating systems of status. Also, being able to recognize the language that is used so it won't be considered bias or have negative connotations. Another method for intervention is using a mixed methodology that provides better outcomes, meaning utilizing different methods of data and research to create a more diverse viewpoint. Considering ethical implications of research is also an important idea for intervention. This method challenges the researcher to understand how the research could be applied and what are the implications made. Additionally, being accountable to the community and/or research population promotes speaking out against unethical or unfair research intentions. Lastly, utilizing a strength-based approach can be used to view communities and different populations through a more complex lens in order to understand the issue at hand. So how do we apply this to STEM? When problems arise, we must consider the audience and address the issue at hand, whether that be lack of representation or unequal funding. It's critical to understand, as the viewer, the level of influence those around you have. In conclusion, today there has been more awareness and encouragement for women and minorities to pursue a career in STEM. Women and minorities in the past have had a limited amount of representation in STEM, but with the help of people like Rosalind Franklin and George Washington Carver, better opportunities for women and minorities now exist. Today, there is now a higher demand for them, which has also brought forth free and diverse thought. Sadly, the exclusion of women and minorities still persists at a more local level. Local being the workplace environment. Those that are discouraged from pursuing a career in STEM perceive the workplace as a predominantly white male field, and it is. The exclusion of women and minorities leads to the untapped potential within STEM. Women and minorities bring diversity to companies. Diversity, as mentioned earlier, brings growth and value. Our proposition to improve awareness about the importance of diversity in STEM is by creating and implementing programs for high school students. It would be effective to provide programs for high school students because they would be old enough to understand the value and importance of diversity, and it could encourage STEM minorities and women to pursue a career in STEM before entering college. These programs would also bring awareness to the systematic issues still prevalent today. For some high school students, this may be their first time understanding the struggles of other individuals and looking through other lenses, but they will hopefully use this understanding to combat systemic issues they may experience in pursuing a job in STEM and other areas of life. Thank you for viewing and listening to our presentation, and these are the references that we used.